Hello once again, my beautiful viewers. It is I, Rtyuiope, from Rtyuiope's Gameroom, and you know, it's been a while since my last review, but now I've finally returned with a review of those oh-so-niche games that you select few like to hear me ramble on about. Today we are going to be talking about a rather obscure survival horror game, if you would even want to call it that, Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon. What's with these niche Japanese games and their long titles? I mean, come on. Anyway, Fragile Dreams is a game that my girlfriend told me about a while ago, and just recently she bought the game, so I decided to give it a shot. And wouldn't you know it, it's actually a pretty interesting game. But is it a super awesome gem that was obscured by bigger releases? Well, I'll get to my opinion on that in here just a minute. So without further ado, let us take a look at Fragile Dreams for the Wii. Fragile Dreams, or as it's better known in Japan as just Fragile, is officially categorized as an action role-playing game for the Wii, but I don't think that description does exactly justice to what it is. See, Fragile Dreams fits more in line with games such as Silent Hill, or to a lesser extent, Resident Evil. It's basically a survival horror game, even though the game isn't necessarily scary or horrifying. In fact, the most horrifying thing about the game is its controls, am I right? But I digress. The game was developed by Crescendo in association with Bandai Namco, and released in 2009 for the Nintendo Wii. Crescendo may be a familiar name to some of you as they have developed the Star Ocean series and the Tales of series. The game was directed, written, and produced by Kentaro Kawashima. It was published by Bandai in Japan and Xseed in America. The game was originally conceived in 2003, way before the Wii was even a sparkle in Nintendo's eye. But when the Wii was eventually unveiled, the developers thought they would be dumb not to put it on the Wii because of the game's key flashlight feature. Kentaro wrote the main scenario outline while the finer details were filled in by a guy named Jinjitsune. I know I probably butchered that, but there's his name on the screen. The game's music was composed by Rei Sato, and the soundtrack that he composed has a lot of ambient tracks in it to help give the game its tone. But there are still some traditional compositions within the OST that just knock it out of the park. Some of my favorites in the OST include To All People, Song of the Moon, and A Thing Called Trust. The artwork is done by a guy named Keiko Harada, and while I'm not a huge fan of the super anime designs of the characters, the clothing and apparel they do wear has a lot of detail and thought put into them, so I can definitely appreciate that. And as I previously stated, the game is kind of confused on what exactly it wants to be. The game is a third-person action RPG in heavy quotations, but it's more closely related to games like Silent Hill, believe it or not. You control the main character named Seto. No, not that Seto, as you explore a vast, post-apocalyptic Tokyo. And when I say control, I mean more like point your Wiimote at the screen and hope it works, because this game has some horrible controls. You have a flashlight that can be pointed at various parts of the screen with the Wiimote while you walk around with the nunchuck. You attack by pointing your flashlight at something, and you hit the A button. Pretty self-explanatory, but it can be very unresponsive. Most of the time you can just point your Wiimote away from the sensor so that the character just faces forward by default, and you can control Seto mostly by using the nunchuck, which makes the experience a tad bit more bearable. There's some various puzzles and things to solve early in the game, but as the game goes on it seems like the developers either just ran out of steam or simply ran out of funding or time. Because while the first half of the game has some very interesting locations and some very interesting puzzles to solve, the later half is almost entirely just long hallways with nothing in them but the occasional enemy that you can just run past. You don't even have to fight them. But if you find yourself in the sticky situation where you cannot simply just run around the enemy, you can attack them with an assortment of weapons you can find laying around, or that you buy from the chicken merchant man. Each weapon has a limited amount of durability, so if you decide to engage in combat at every chance you get to pad out this game as much as you can, you will have to switch out weapons regularly. Some of the enemy designs can actually be rather unsettling, which is definitely a positive for the game's tone, but once you figure out that you can just run past most of them without ever actually having to put up a fight, they kind of lose their creep factor. I mean, it's not entirely pointless to fight the enemies, because after all, the game does market itself as an RPG, so after all, there is a leveling system, but it is so bare bones and has so little substance that the only real point of leveling up is to get more HP. There are no skill points as far as I could tell, and if there was, it wasn't very clear on where they were. And even if there are skill points, they must not be very important considering that I beat the game with relative ease except for the final boss, but that was more because of the crappy controls and less of me being lower leveled. The locations in the game are never really too full of stuff to find, but at least in the first few areas they contain a few things called memory items, which are items that carry memories of people from before the apocalypse to help flesh out the world. And I highly recommend finding all of these, as it is more entertaining than the half-assed combat. You can listen to these items, access the merchant, save, or simply heal up at bonfires scattered throughout the game. And as you can probably tell, this game didn't really impress me too much from its gameplay, but thankfully what it lacks in game design and pacing, it makes up for in story, music, and theme. Hello and welcome to another episode of Physical Editions. Today we're looking at Fragile Dreams for the Wii. And yeah, it's just a standard edition, so this won't be long. But we'll go ahead and take a look at it. On the front cover we have Seto and the mysterious silver-haired girl. I know her name, but it's not stated until the end, so I won't spoil it. On the back, we got some cool art of Seto right there with some shots from the game. And it also says bonus reversible cover, so we'll take a look at that here in a second. But let's take a look at the inside, shall we? Inside, we just got a disc with the silver-haired girl and Seto on the inside, and we have an instruction manual. You don't see these around very much anymore, but yeah, it's a full-color manual with art of the characters like Seto, and some of the other characters. And here we have the cool reversible cover with the white spine. If it only said Wii at the top, I would definitely use this instead of the standard. But yeah, that should be about it. This has been Physical Editions, and I hope to see you guys next time. The game takes place in the distant future where most of humanity is wiped out and is now infested with monsters, robots, and spirits. Hey, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. The game's main protagonist is named Seto, who has lived with his grandpa that he doesn't know the name of, inside of this super cool observatory in Tokyo, Japan. One day, Seto's grandfather dies, and he is left with a note telling him to head west, or some sort of direction that I don't really remember, but it's not important. Anyway, he heads in whatever direction his grandpa wanted him to go to, and after a beautiful opening, Seto encounters a silver-haired girl who is singing near a pond of lotus flowers. After he startles her, she runs away and he chases after her because she is the first human he's seen in a while. And this is basically the main objective of the whole game, is chasing after this silver-haired girl while you meet robots, ghosts, and weird bird cat guys who are super friendly, who all become your friends. I'm giving a very basic synopsis of the plot because I don't want to give anything away. I'm not giving the plot too much justice, but it's really interesting and engaging from start to finish. And as I previously stated, I highly recommend finding all the memory items that you can. It really helps flesh out the world and environments that they are found in. Also, some memory items tie in with each other to make an overarching side story that coincides with the game's themes. So, speaking of themes, the game deals with death, loneliness, and communication. It explores these themes in a very interesting way that isn't truly explained until the end, but you can sort of puzzle it together if you find those memory items, or just pay really close attention to the dialogue being said. Once you piece all of these together, it can give you a real sense of achievement. It really makes you feel like you've discovered something about this world, which is a feeling similar to that of the Souls series. The game kind of ends in a way that leaves some questions unanswered, which is where the manga comes in. The Fragile Dreams manga is a short companion piece to the game written by Hirune Sumino, and its purpose is to wrap up the game's unanswered questions. It doesn't feel like patchwork for loose ends though. There are some questions left deliberately unanswered at the end of the game, but for those who want those answers cleared up, there is the manga. So, if you want to know what these answers are, I'd say go and seek out the manga to read. If you don't, then you can appreciate Fragile Dreams completely as a standalone piece as originally intended. There really is no wrong answer. Now, would I recommend Fragile Dreams? As I said, the gameplay is an absolute slog to get through, but I truly believe that the story, tone, and music are well worth playing from beginning to end. And as most of these kind of games seem to go, Gungrave, you can beat Fragile Dreams in one sitting, if you're truly dedicated, that is, so there's really no harm in it. If you're interested in a niche video game title with a super interesting plot, characters, awesome soundtrack, an interesting world, and have a free day to just throw at it, I'd definitely say go for it. And while Fragile Dreams won't be a game that I'll be looking back as a necessarily fun experience, it is an experience that I can appreciate with the love and passion that they put into it. They clearly didn't skip out with the narrative and musical concepts to this game, and as I've said 100 times before in this review, are well worth playing the game for alone. So, go out there and give it a try. Or don't. You don't really have to. This has been Rtyuiope from Rtyuiope's Game Room, signing out. Hey, I just wanted to drop in to let you guys know that I am currently writing my own comic along with making these reviews. You can read it down below in the description where I will link 2 different links where you can pick whatever source you want to read it in. I also have a t-shirt shop open if you want to feel free and take a look at those. I'd greatly appreciate that as well. And also, I currently have a Patreon open, so please feel free to donate to that and help out the show and all the other creative endeavors that I partake in. Anyway, this is just a few little things that I wanted to keep you guys up to date with, so until next time, I'll see you guys later.